Good afternoon, everyone. I am Emily Bull, DRI's Marketing Director, and I will be your moderator for today's ZonnalPay webinar. Before I introduce our presenters, I want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. All of our attendees are muted as they enter the session. Today's presentation will be about 30 minutes, and we will open the floor for a live Q&A session at the end of the live presentation. If you'd like to ask a question, you may do so by typing and submitting your question in the question tab of your GoToWebinar toolbar. We welcome you to submit a question at any time throughout the session. Anytime the moment strikes and you have a question, go ahead and submit it, and we'll ask them at the end of the session. If we don't have time or we run out of time for some reason to get to your question, we will follow up with you directly via email following the live broadcast. We will also be recording this webinar, and that recording will be emailed to all of our registrants following the live presentation. You can expect that either this afternoon or tomorrow sometime. With that, I am pleased to introduce our presenters today. We have two people joining us, as you can see. Handling the demo portion of today's ZonnalPay presentation is DRI Head of Products and Alliances, David Willett. And also joining us is Dan Fox, DRI's newest partner and president of Advanced Bank Card Solutions. Before we pass it off to David for the demo, I will hand it off to you, Dan, to introduce ZonnalPay and tell our guests here a little bit more about how this partnership with DRI formed. So go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Emily, and welcome to everybody. This has been long planned, and we're excited to be working with DRI to launch this ZonnalPay application out into the SyteLine market. What you're seeing on the screen is just some highlights as to what this solution really does. ZonnalPay enables an efficient flow for invoice to cash. A few of the things that it does. You know how many of you, you're utilizing the CCI inside of SyteLine to accept credit card payments? Well, natively, that's how it's configured. But what ZonnalPay now does is not only allow you to accept credit card payments, but also ACH payments. The intent here is that it should help you to bring down your cost of acceptance. Anytime you can accept an electronic check, certainly, as I know and you can understand, the cost of that is just so much lower. So we're happy to be able to bring the solution out into the SyteLine market. This also presents an opportunity for you all to get paid faster. Why? Because it's really a self-pay model where you're generating an email or a text from inside of SyteLine that goes out to your customer, and they can pay on their own time, which also means that they're not calling you or emailing you, taking your time to pay, because once they pay, that record is automatically loaded into SyteLine, indicating that they're paid. Another intended benefit is from a security perspective, because they're not emailing you with card data, and we always hate that, and you know I've talked with most of you all about that many times. They're the ones that are keying their card data or their checking account information, and therefore you're not receiving that. It enables your environment to be more secure. And making all of this possible really is Decision 365. This ZonnalPay solution leverages Decision 365 for exception management, and more broadly for decision resources, the order to cash automation. So these are just some of the highlights of what ZonnalPay will do for you. And so with that, David Willett is going to tell you more and drill down into it to show you that these benefits that it's intended to provide to you.
Great. So I'll just start in, and I'm probably going to turn off my camera here just so I can look around. So just to start, as Dan mentioned at the end, SyteLine is the source. So we take SyteLine accounts receivable posted invoices that still have a balance on them. So if there's an invoice that's fully paid, it won't go out. And SyteLine remains a system of record, and we push these into the ZonnalPay console. And as you can see here, we have a number of invoices. They're prefixed LA, that's the site they came from, and then the invoice number. So we're looking right now at things from the demo database, a little bit old on the invoices here, but as they go into here, we have then the choice of whether we want to email the invoice, or it will actually go text to their mobile phones. And then as Dan mentioned, they have the options of when to pay that, and we'll be going into that in a moment. One of the things that your customer will see is they're going to actually see the email and pop it up, and they'll see the actual invoice, as well as we can attach or link to the actual invoice that came from SyteLine. So many times we're just interested in sending out the dollar amount and we'd like them to pay, but maybe the invoice has got certification on it, maybe it's got details, and we can send the invoice that was either produced by a customer order or an SRO. The other thing you see on the screen is branding. So these different, as a customer, we would put your logo, your address, your terms and conditions if you wanted them on that. So the customer who's receiving this invoice gets a brand from you and then can also get other details as well. I'm going to be mainly working today using our brand name, but of course you have capability to use your own later. So this is essentially the same screen, but just showing you on the top right-hand corner, most of you would recognize the accounts receivable posted transaction detail form. So this is coming from SyteLine 10 Cloud, but this would also work with SyteLine 9. And then as it comes into the console, you can see, you know, we call it in the demo database, it's customer number 13. Well, we bring out the actual customer. We will create the customer on the fly as we're bringing it in, so that's automatic. And then the invoice number is prefixed by the site. And one of the reasons we do this is Decision 365 is multi-channel, multi-site, but you have the flexibility to put multiple sites invoices into one ZonnalPay console, or you might have a separate ZonnalPay console per site. And the point is we can do this either way. It's what works best for you, and that's the kind of thing you'll work out with Dan. So the other thing is once these are paid, if you were to go in and start paying an invoice, they would come off this console. So invoices come off of here either because you've chosen to not have them in your group, so you may have a filter, or you may actually select certain invoices that you don't want to be sent out. But once they are sent out, once they're paid in SyteLine, they will automatically come off this console. This is yet another console. This is from a real customer, and I do mention used by permission. So real invoices going out. You can see the site prefix there again and their invoice number, and just gives you an idea. I forgot to mention, and hopefully I'll remember to show this. You can type for information in here, and it's a quick find of the particular details of the invoice you're looking for. Decision 365 has a payments workbench. This was first developed to deal with EDI 820, which are called remittance advices. We then added it to Shopify, and what you're looking at is a screen of Shopify payments that actually came in this morning. I just took a picture of that. And in that payments workbench, we're obviously keeping track of when we received the payment, when the actual payment was captured, what the check number, the transaction number inside is, and then the order or the invoice, order and invoice they're paying against. And then on the right-hand side, similar to how we do in other Decision 365 areas, is we have a link directly to the SyteLine form where that occurred, or we have a link down below where what produced it. So using and leveraging that same technology, once again, for ZonnalPay. Same payment workbench, inbound to SyteLine. So we pull the data from ZonnalPay when a payment arrives. You can see it's the number 31. We match it up to the invoice in SyteLine, and we optionally post it. And one of the options we have is either to just make it a payment and then you can post it, or we can automatically post it. And then you could link to that in SyteLine. These are grayed out. These are real customer snapshots. I'd like to go into a system, but for right now, I could just show you the detail from here. This is something that we're developing to, again, leverage some of the existing SyteLine capabilities. That would be, as you know, we already do, well, I want you to know, we take orders in from EDI, we take orders in from e-commerce, we take orders in now from OCR and PDFs. And ZonnalPay has the ability to put a QR code out there, and we'll do this during the actual live demo, where you can actually shoot that QR code with your phone. And by the way, if you have your phones, a little bit later we'll be doing that, so you can take a picture, and this will generate an order, and that order will become an order in SyteLine with a prepayment and a credit applied against the order. So we'll have some fun with that in a little bit. Okay, so let's look at ZonnalPay. So I just came in right now to Decision Resources, and I came in as a pretty powerful user. In all cases, these invoices in production would come out of your SyteLine system. So because I'm an administrator, I have some ability to create things here, but SyteLine is the system of record. And if I was just looking for something like, if I said Dan, or if I, oops, there is no Dan in here. Why don't I find one that I have? If I just go to invoice here, I can see in the invoice the complete history of what's happened with the customer. And of course, this is mostly me, it's demo data, but I can see and look down the history and see when the customers clicked it, when the link was sent. This one was sent to a text. I can go and look at that invoice and say, open as the customer. What does that look like? Here it is. It's for a racing bicycle. This is what your customer would see, either in text or in the email. And then your customer has the choice to pay it. And so in this example, I'm going to choose from my payment options. So one of the options I have is my saved, of course this is a demo, but my saved credit card, my saved ACH or bank number. This could be an electronic check too. Somebody could just read off the check routing number and the check number on their account and they could save it. Or a saved credit card, and of course I could add it myself or add it here. So I'm just going to use one that's online and pay it. Another option we support, I'll just mention, is we can turn on or off the ability to do a partial pay. So many companies say, hey, we're not going to accept a partial pay on this. We're only going to accept full pay. But I have the partial pay on here. So they go to pay. It's using their saved card, pay, and they'll receive a receipt in email telling them the invoice is paid, and we'll pick it up in SyteLine. So what SyteLine looks like, and I'll just jump between, and we'll go back to ZonnalPay in a second, is, you know, in SyteLine we have, I'm looking at orders right now, where we have incoming orders and incoming orders. We have a link that lets us link over, just like I showed before. But I could go over and jump to the payments, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blow up my Outlook here. Hold on. And this is what I would see, the payment coming in. And I'll talk about the exceptions in a second. You're going to get very few exceptions because you're collecting money against invoices that we sent out. So I have this one here called Ryan because I do want to link to a ZonnalPay site, and I don't want to link to a ZonnalPay site for a real customer, but this is a good example. I can see and link directly to it, so I know exactly where that order came from, and I can link to it like that. I could also link into my AR. So just like the other Decision 365 consoles, people don't always like to look at good data. It's a waste of time to look at good data. You just want to look at the exceptions. And like I said, you're not going to find very many exceptions, but here's one. And this was in testing, but what if somebody pays the invoice by check at the same time that they pay it with ZonnalPay? Well, we're going to match that up. We're going to find that. That's an exception. But in general, things are going to be automated. And we have customers running hundreds and hundreds of payments a day, and some posting or some just going to payments. Back to ZonnalPay. Sorry about that. Shouldn't have left it. Live demo. So one of the things, we'll see a new payment showed up. Where did that come from? That's the payment I just made. So I just paid that particular invoice and it's captured. This is what Decision 365 picks up and puts into SyteLine. So one of the things I talked about a little bit earlier was the ability to do prepayments and things like that. And this is a fun one. So I can go in and say, I'm going to create a payment link. And what kind of payment link am I going to create? Well, I want to sell rolls. Obviously, I have some products here that I can do, and I showed some other ones in the screen. Or maybe I'll just pick this. I'll pick a nice brew, or whole tractor, and then I can make my own custom label, prepay. Maybe as a down payment. I can have other fields that I would ask the customer questions for. I'm not going to do this right now, but I can have, weight, delivery, color, red, blue, and I get what's called a payment link. And from here, if you folks want to, you can shoot that. And should have probably given you more time, but if anybody wants to take that with QR code, they should see that come up. So this is a way that you can send this if you had people in the field who are possibly taking down payments. So we have one soon-to-be customer sells windows to companies, to residents, and they send their salespeople out into the field, and they get the windows right and the Windows stuff right, and they take a prepayment. They can just show that to the prospects. So it can be done in the field as well. Okay, so that was the fun part there. Let's see. And by the way, when they do pay, you're going to see an order show up. So if anybody did put in such a thing, or we'll look here in a little bit later, an order could come in. These would go into SyteLine in the same Decision 365 order console, demand console is what we called it, that we use for EDI. And thanks, Dan. Should have given you more warning, but you can see the payment came in real time. And this is Webinar Fox versus Dan Fox. So should have queued that up better, sorry. Okay, that's pretty much how ZonnalPay works. The idea is it's to be completely automated. You can also, change things that you want to see on this. I can, choose to not show my customer, which is, what I've done in some cases. I can, go to any of these invoices, just look at the status like I already did on this. This one has no history. Let me look at a few others here. But in general, I think we've covered the core of it. Emily, I think we're close to opening up to questions. Any
Okay.
on that? Dan,
Yeah,
did I forget? By the way, this is our first webinar on this, so we're a little rusty. But Dan, did I forget any of the major points? No. Okay. Go ahead, Emily.
Okay.
No, David, I think that mainly my question, which I'm not sure I heard because I was typing to make that payment, did you talk about that AR posted transactions are updated?
Well, yeah, they are. I mean, yes, they certainly are. And these are, and they come in and they are posted to the SyteLine AR. I did find an example in a customer system where I was able to go and link to the actual record in ZonnalPay. So they certainly come in. We do have exceptions. You know, if there's a problem, and again, you're going to get so few problems because the data came from your system in the first place. But let's say somebody else paid for the invoice. Let's say, can't really delete invoices. I'm just thinking of exceptions that would happen. Not many, but the point is we are validating that invoice, we are matching that invoice, and we are posting it against the original invoice. So that's, the whole loop is done. We take it out of SyteLine, the system of record, and we bring it back into SyteLine. So yes, I did cover that.
All right. Well, if we're ready to jump in to the
Yes.
questions, we did have 3 questions that came through during your presentation, David. And just a reminder to our attendees, if you have a question, you can just toggle to the questions toolbar within your GoToWebinar toolbar, and you can type and submit your questions in that question box. So I'll jump in. The first question is, how easy is this to implement? How soon can we get started?
Well, it's certainly not an ERP implementation, and it's nowhere near as complicated as EDI. We can get you connected within 2 to 3 weeks, but then you're probably looking at another 2 to 3 weeks to roll out the process. So typically, I would budget about a 2-month full implementation process. Dan, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I think that most of you that are joining us today, you've already got many of the piece parts already. So for example, you need to have, you know, an ABS merchant account, and you need to have the BridgePay gateway. For those of you who also want to add the ability for check processing, we need to launch an account to make that happen. And then we integrate it into ZonnalPay. And then the next piece is the part that DRI would be doing, which is making sure that that link, the setup was done correctly so that it does pull data correctly from your SyteLine instance and passes data back into your SyteLine site.
And probably worth mentioning, if you're already an existing Decision 365 user, we're going to knock a couple weeks off of that. And for existing users, we give a different console. So the payments come into a different console than orders do. So I would have orders, I'm mixing all my, I'm sorry, I'm going off script here a little bit, but my orders, I would have my EDI orders, my eCom orders, my OCR orders, they're all orders. So I would keep them in the same place. So we're adding just another folder structure for security, because you don't necessarily want the order people playing with the financials. Okay, next question you had?
Yep.
Well, before
questions. Oh,
Emily,
go ahead.
Yeah, one more comment. Also, because you're using your existing BridgePay gateway, that really says that all these transactions that are passing through ZonnalPay are going into that gateway. So you're already familiar with it. That's just presents another place where you can look at transaction data and run reports. Although we believe you'll spend most of your time either in SyteLine, because that's where your system of record is, or for some of the things, so some of the features and functionalities that the ZonnalPay interface offers, you might find that to perhaps be more visually pleasing, maybe a little more powerful in certain respects. But fundamentally, you have most of what you already need. We're just passing transactions through ZonnalPay into BridgePay.
Okay. We do have a couple more questions coming through, so I will jump to the next one. How do we implement if our TRN environment does not have invoices?
Actually, that's a good one. I probably should have mentioned that. So this is one of those programs that actually entering and working in pilot is less than ideal. And the reason is we're sending out emails to people and we're texting people. And a lot of times that data in your pilot system was never intended to actually be used and send things out. And so if we're pulling from your pilot system and sending out to real people, that can cause an issue if you send them a fake invoice or an old invoice. So what we like doing is a controlled production thing. First of all, we're pulling information from SyteLine initially. We're not writing any information initially. And when we pull that information, we're pulling off the accounts receivable posted invoices. So they're real invoices that you've probably already sent your customer. You probably emailed it, used the customer document profiles. So we're just enhancing that. And we bring those into ZonnalPay, and then you can choose whether you want to email those and send those to your customer. So it's a very controlled way of doing it. We'll maybe do 5 or 10 invoices at first. And so I prefer we start in a production system because we're not writing data back until we get that payment back and it goes to the AR payments. And in that way, you can still review it and choose to post them or not. But again, it's not interfering with what you're already doing. It's actually enhancing what you're doing.
David, I think what also makes this methodology from implementation controllable, meaning we want to do a controlled release, is that we can design it such that SyteLine is ZonnalPay is pulling the data from SyteLine. It's coming into ZonnalPay, but we can stop it at the door before that email or text is sent out.
Right. And on these, like I didn't go into the whole thing here, but I can get to an invoice and then I can choose by editing. If this came out of our demo system, I have no idea. I'm pretty sure that is a fake email, but I don't want to be sending that out, if I don't know. And literally they come in like this. And then once we turn it on that we want to notify, they'll go out automatically. We also have the ability to turn it on automatically so you don't have to go into it, but just being a little more cautious to start.
Okay.
Emily, did you say there was another one? Or?
Yeah, there are 2 more. And just before I jump into those, one final reminder, if you have a question, you can toggle to the question box of your GoToWebinar toolbar and type and submit the question there. The next question is, does this interfere or replace credit card payments through the CCI that we already use?
So, many of you are already using CCI and your customers are calling in and you are authorizing cards and you're going through your processes to actually charge the card and then ship. And that will not be disrupted. ZonnalPay simply gives you another way of accepting payments from your customers. So they live together.
Okay, so we have one more question, and it is there a cost per transaction in addition to the credit card processing fee?
At this time, so that sounds like somebody who's familiar with Decision 365. At this time with ZonnalPay, we are not doing a transaction charge. We aren't. Dan, do you have a transaction charge on your end?
There isn't a new transaction charge. As long as you stay within a certain quantity per month, and we can talk about that, but it's a generous quantity, so that you really shouldn't see an additional per transaction fee.
We can follow up with this person directly via email to give more specific information as well.
And I also wanted to show a demo thing I failed at. I typed in Dan, and of course there was no Dan, but if I type in an invoice number, I'm looking for invoice 414, that's the kind of response that you can expect to get. Of course, stupid mistake, know your data, but I just wanted to show you a little bit how quickly that search works when you're actually typing in data that exists. Were there any other questions, Emily?
We just had one more come through. What happens if the credit card is later rejected?
Later means what? And what part of the process would that be? So for example, when the customer and let's just call it, let's talk about a credit card payment. They received their email or text, they hit pay, they entered in their card information and it declined. There are notifications that can be set up inside ZonnalPay to notify you, the SyteLine customer, that the customer's payment failed.
We don't pick it up. We don't pick it up until it's been paid and captured. So these things, I mean, this is obviously bogus data, but this is what we're pulling from. And the payment has been authorized and captured before it shows up here. If it was not authorized or declined, it actually will show declined, but we don't pick up declined. So
They defined later as being contested.
oh, disputed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from a dispute standpoint, so that's obviously after the fact, and that would be handled through our other interface, just as you would be receiving any dispute today.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not automating disputed. I mean, and then also you'd go into SyteLine and either issue a credit against it or not, depending upon the outcome of the dispute.
Excellent. All right, well, that appears to be all of our questions. Dan or David, do you have anything you'd like to add before I sign off here?
Nope.
No? Okay.
We're good.
Okay, well, that's all the
Thank you,
questions
folks.
we have. So, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll be at the SyteLine User Network conference. So anybody who also is attending, come and see us, talk to us. We'll be happy to show this to you in greater detail.
Yep. So if you're at Sun Conference, that is April 15th, 16th, and 17th in Tampa. If you visit decision.com/events, there's information about Sun Conference on the DRI website. DRI's booth, if you are attending, is booth 301. We will be right next to Invoice, so it'll be nice and easy to find. But you can stop by, say hi to Dan and David, and set up a personalized demo while you're there. So look forward to seeing some of you hopefully at Sun. But since that's all our questions, I'll go ahead and take this opportunity to sign off. A reminder that you can expect to receive an email this afternoon or tomorrow with a link to the recording of the webinar. You are welcome to respond to that email if you have any follow-up questions. But that's all we have today. Thank you, David. Thank you, Dan, for your presentation today. And thank you to all of our attendees. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thanks.